Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Hot Food and Beverage Trends. I'm Carmen Donnelly from Edmonton International Airport in Canada, and I'm really pleased to be here this morning and be your moderator. I think that you'll really enjoy the presenters that we have this morning. So I come from the same city where Wayne Gretzky comes from. Not a lot of people might know where Edmonton is, but he was a famous hockey player, of course, with the Edmonton Oilers and spent 10 years in our great city where he won 4 Stanley Cups. And we recently partnered with HMS Host to open a Wayne Gretzky wine and whiskey bar in our airport. It's been a huge success and a great example of a food and beverage concept that hits all day parts: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and of course beverages. He crafts his own wine and whiskey, and we know that the celebrity trend is very engaging. In addition to that, we see in airports celebrity chefs, sports teams, race car drivers, and of course hockey legends being celebrities that are named in restaurants at our airports. This morning we will hear more about trends, food and beverage trends. I'd like to introduce our panelists that we will hear from this morning. Elizabeth Moskow. She's with SRG Culinary Shifts, and she's the culinary director and food trendologist. She will provide us an overview of predictors and how we identify trends related to food and beverage. In addition to that, we also have Suzy Badaracco. Suzy's with Culinary Tides Incorporated, and she's the president, toxicologist, chef, and dietitian. She will provide her insights on trends, flavors, and themes in the food and beverage world. I'd also like to introduce Jeremy Julian of North Star. He's the Chief Operating Officer, and he'll be rounding out our panel this morning, where he'll speak to trends in technology, specifically an overview of cloud-based restaurant point of sales. I'll now turn it over to Liz. Let's get started.
Thank you, Carmen. As Carmen mentioned, I'm Liz Moskow with Sterling Rice Group, a branding innovation firm out of Boulder, Colorado. I'm the culinary director, and I also am a trendologist. And what that means is that I get to go to a lot of fun food shows, read a lot of food publications. And most recently, this weekend was Natural Foods Expo West in Anaheim, California. I recently returned from walking miles and miles of trade show floors that spilled over into 2 hotels. And an overwhelming trend that we kept seeing over and over again is probiotics. While that isn't really that pertinent to the airport crew, I wanted to illustrate how that trend of probiotic came to be. So at Sterling Rice Group, we inform a lot of clients through some of the work that we do in identifying these trends. So this is one of the things we produce yearly. It's called the Top 10 Cutting Edge Trends of 2017. We produced this in October, and it talks about some of the other trends that are happening. Referring back to that probiotic trend that we just saw in Expo West, we call that trend, it's happening from the awareness of food RX, food as medicine. People starting to get sources of medicine and advice, medical advice from all sorts of places, online, WebMD, their friend Debbie, whomever might be doling out advice is telling them what they should eat, what they shouldn't eat. And so it's giving rise to all of these different food trends, for example, the probiotic trend at Expo West. So at Sterling Rice Group, we identify what we call culinary shifts. Culinary shifts are our proprietary tool, or you can think of it almost as a lens at which we look at what's happening in society, in technology, in the environmental space, in the economy, and in the political space, and we layer these, what we call, again, shifts, over what's happening in society, and then we look at what possibly could be a trend that stems down to the culinary world. Some of the relevant shifts we'll discuss today that are relevant to you and your customer in the airport space are wholesome balance, meet my needs, and comfort and community. I chose these 3 shifts specifically because food RX, as we discussed in the probiotic space, isn't that relevant for your customer. However, wholesome balance is. So wholesome balance is all about making healthier choices during the constraints of your life. So what more relevant space would that be as a traveler in an airport, looking to nourish yourself in a better way than you would just shoving a bag of chips down your throat? And so people are seeking wellness, satiety, satisfaction, and health, especially when they're traveling. Some of the ways that this manifests itself is through healthier for you or better for you snacking. Having the option to provide some of your clients, whether it's a busy mom who is trying to satisfy their child's needs to eat between flights with something that is free from gluten or is less fattening or better for her or him, is by choosing snacks now made from things like chickpeas or popcorn instead of a high-fat potato chip, or balanced snacking that includes protein and more of a complete meal like this Hillshire snacking, or you may have seen things like P3 out there in the supermarket that's doing really well because people are looking for protein sources that are more filling and then prevent them from snacking even more between meals. Another way this wholesome balance shift shows us what might become trendy is in better for you snacking in terms of something that's more similar to what they're interested in really eating. So if you really have to have that bag of potato chips, perhaps people would consider it healthier to pick up a bag of Jackson's Honest potato chips that are fried in coconut oil rather than traditional oil. Coconut oil being a little bit more healthy for you, has medium chain fatty acids, and just has this health halo that coconut has been giving products most recently. Things like avocado oil as well, or even popcorn that's popped in olive oil also have this halo of health and a better for you choice that fits under this wholesome balanced snacking. Meet my needs. This one is very relevant to your clients, a way that we can look at what's happening in the environment and technology. Meet my needs is not only talks about what technologies make things faster and easier for your traveling client, it also talks about personalization, customization, and giving them what they need when they want it as fast as they want it. So the way that this manifests and is relevant to you and your client is some of the options that give them the ability to personalize their food the way that they want to eat it. For example, the bowl craze. Whether it's you pick your bed of lettuce, you pick some rice, you pick some beans, whatever the base is of your bowl, and then you customize that bowl depending on what you want on it, but most importantly, what you don't want on it, you can leave off. People have increased needs of allergy restrictions, diet restrictions. This one's paleo, that one's gluten-free. Somebody doesn't eat dairy. This build-a-bowl craze and trend is really important, especially for the busy traveler. Food halls. This is really just, you might have seen them in your hometown, these trendy, millennial sort of warehouses being turned into this new incarnation of a food court. Well, restaurants and airports and concessions have been doing this modified food hall for years. But considering doing this in one space with multiple concepts within that space gives busy moms, busy travelers, people who are dragging because they're waiting for a flight that never comes and is delayed 4 hours, gives them options, and they can please everyone in one place. And then lastly, Meals My Way, again, is this rise of automated eating. If you were alive in the 50s and 60s, maybe you've been to an automat. Automat is sort of this food vending for meals, and that's really coming back. Millennials, as you know, like to interface more with technology sometimes than with people, and this is giving rise to concepts like Eatsa out of San Francisco, which allows people to order their food on a kiosk. That food gets put into this vending machine. They don't ever have to interact with the person. They get it right because they're able to write down exactly what they want, and it pops out the front of the vending machine. Meals My Way, also that meet my needs, that ramen noodle craze arose from this shift as well. It has a global influence. It's very umami flavor. It's very comforting. These are different types of bowl options that are trendy right now. So poke bowls. This one came on really fast and really furious. You're seeing poke shops, poke burritos, another option to put it on top of rice or on top of a salad. Poke is really trendy right now as well. And then the whole plant-based protein is coming on strong. Every meal doesn't need to include meat or have meat as this focus. It can use meat for flavor and use plant proteins to perceive that meal as more healthy, less filling. Especially really good for the busy traveler who doesn't want to eat this heavy, filling meal and then get on a plane. Plant-based protein is coming on strong. And then the last lens or shift that we will discuss in terms of trends and how we look at trends for your set is comfort and community. When people are traveling, they're often angry or irritated or rushed or tired. They woke up for a really early flight, and they really just need a dose of kindness, happiness, and comfort. And that can come from a lot of places, whether it reminds them of their mom's chicken soup, something familiar that they have every day in the morning that just brings a little bit of normalcy to their travel schedule, or just provides them with some kinship. You have something paleo. Oh my God, I'm paleo. There's something paleo. I feel really understood and connected while I'm traveling. So what more relevant product could there be than coffee to create this sense of community, culture, understanding, and comfort? As you know, coffee is more than just a beverage. You don't drink coffee, you have coffee. So it's this experience that can be created in many ways, whether that's on the go, in a ready-to-drink bottle. It's something that can be savored. Think about that business meeting people can have either at the gate or in a club at the airport. It's something that gives them this sense of normalcy. They woke up really early for a flight. They get to the airport. They get settled. They grab themselves a cup of coffee. Coffee is comfort. And coffee is really exploding. You might not be able to keep up with the next and newest coffee trends. You might see whether it's a nitro coffee or a slow brew coffee or a cascara. What is cascara coffee? Coffee, even Starbucks is having it. They're taking different parts of the bean, in this case, the coffee fruit, and they're using the extract of that and putting a syrup on top of their latte. Coffee is really being exploited right now for its many, many uses. There's coffee leaf tea. There is, like I said, nitro coffee, and there's even hopped coffee. So people treating coffee more like a beer experience. And again, that ropes in that whole idea of comfort and community. So basically, what we do at Sterling Rice Group, once again, is predict trends. Not only just the trends, but we predict these shifts. We understand the shifts. We evaluate the shifts so that we can help our clients understand what products they should develop next. And it's really a great way of viewing what's coming down the pike. And you guys can use this information by thinking about what's happening in society and then thinking a little bit deeper about what you're seeing trending. At breakfast this morning, I don't know if many of you had the buffet, you'll notice there were purple potatoes. Now that's a trend. And again, coming back to that Food RX description I discussed with the probiotics at Anaheim at Expo West, purple potatoes, same in blueberries, are high in anthocyanins, which are very healthy antioxidants for you. So even in places like New Orleans, where you can get your etouffee and your jambalaya and your beignets and everything really bad for you, at this hotel, they're using purple potatoes because they're trending. But just start to look at different things around you, whether it's at your place of business, in the airport that you travel through, or even at MSY on your way out, and see what little cues they use of trends, and just think about where those trends came from. Thank you. So our next speaker is Suzy Badaracco from Culinary Tides. She's going to talk a little bit more in depth about these actual trends as opposed to how these trends come about. Suzy?
Thank you. Make sure did I turn my mic on okay? Yes, I did. All right, let's see. I'm a wanderer. Okay, I speak fast, but don't worry. If you want my slides, happy to give you them. Just give me your card at the end. Okay, so first, the food and flavor forecast. These are kind of poster children for what's going on. Let me just bring up two of these guys. So before you even get to what the food and flavors are, you have to know where do they sit on the playground. So you've got sustainability issues that consumers are hot with, so local but in global dishes, organic, non-GMO, invasivores. Invasivores are invasive plants or animal species like lionfish in Florida that are showing up on the menu. So instead of just getting rid of them, you eat them. Seasonal is actually a cooler place to be than local right now. Seasonal is cooler because there is clinical research behind seasonal cooking to show exactly what the health benefits are. Local is not really realistic, right? If you can get local, great. But if you're living in New York, you're not going to be eating potatoes all winter. You're going to get citrused from Florida. So the slides I'm showing you today, my background is military intelligence and chaos theory. So yes, I actually was a criminalist. I did serial killers, crime scenes, and FBI, trained with FBI and Scotland Yard in London, and they're the ones that figured out apparently I'm a pattern recognizer. So now instead of tracking serial killers, I track cereal bars. So it's actually true. It's sad, but it's true. So what my company does actually is we work as a sidelong think tank to food industry, anybody in the food industry. We work on 1-year to 5-year contracts, and we're tracking all government, technology, adversary, and ally, all your competitors, any kind of research, clinical health research, consumer research, behavioral research, industry research, food and flavor trends as well. My background is actually I'm a toxicologist, a chef, and a registered dietitian. I am so done with school. All right, so the things you're looking at right now, the 10 slides I have actually are comprised of 350 quantitative research reports. Chaos theory doesn't work without quantitative research. So now we can go on. Okay, preparation, how is it being prepared? Basically, set it on fire. If you can set it on fire, you're good to go. You are not seeing stewing or braising or any of the wet techniques right now, because when we're in an economic recovery, you set things on fire. If we were in a recession, you would be seeing soups and stews a lot more. But wildcrafting is just cooking with foraged foods. By the way, foraging is hot because you either have to be dead crazy or wicked smart to do it. You don't see foraging in a recession, you only see it in a recovery. Pickled, sour, fermented. Everything is the extreme on the palate when you're in an economic recovery. That's why you're seeing live fire, you're seeing pickled, sour, fermented, you're seeing stuffed, hybrids, all these different nuanced combinations, spiralized vegetables. That's why these preparation techniques are showing up. If we fell into recession, they would be all off the map. Health. So yes, there is a protein trend. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Grains are roaring back. Consumers really are not hot on gluten-free as much as industry thinks they are. They are going back to grains, whole breads, because they figured out it is a medical diet. There's no reason to be on it. Nutrient-dense foods, free from, the concept of free from. Natural, FDA right now is trying to define natural. They keep kind of putting that deadline off. Beans and pulses, the UN had a hand in raising their profile quite a bit. So then meal types, again, here's foraged, seasonal. The concept of meal kits, so it's sort of speed scratch, right? I didn't have to prepare all of it, but I still get to claim that I made the meal. Solo dining. Solo dining is my favorite. Solo dining is on the rise during an economic recovery because this is kind of depressing but funny at the same time. The divorce rate goes up during an economic recovery. Why? Because I can afford to divorce you. So I'm going to, because I got my job back, so bye-bye. So solo dining goes up, single parents goes up, business travel goes up during economic recovery, so that's also solo dining. And then also you're just a little more confident to be able to go out to a movie by yourself maybe, or have lunch by yourself. So there's 3 main reasons solo dining goes up. Divorce one is just always cracks me up, but look at the stats. It happens every time we go into recovery. Secret menus are very hot. Secret is because you're hip, cool, and in the know, that you're the one that knows there's a secret menu, and you maybe get to tell your friends or family about Starbucks secret menu or In-N-Out Burger secret menu. Taco Bell has a secret menu. It's not so secret because you can Google it, but still, you can still be the first one to know about it. Settings, convenience stores now being convenience restaurants, and even in airports you can see many of the, quote, convenience store shops in airports are now carrying full sandwiches, salads, so on and so forth. So they're giving the restaurants in the airports a run for their money too. Airport lounges, there is travel research that shows business travelers, if they have to hop through the middle of the country, let's say, to wherever their destination is, they will target specific airports because of the bars, the food service in that particular airport. Then food court restaurants moving out. So the poster child for this is probably Panda Express, right? So now some of these traditionally food court restaurants are now moving into airports, moving onto cruise ships, moving into standalone arenas. So that's kind of your playground. Now you've got your actual items, and these are kind of some of the poster children. Dairy, you've got plant-based dairy, quote unquote, coming up. That's kind of giving government a headache right now too. Almond milks, and some of the other nut milks. Yogurt's going a little more savory, still pretty global, still pretty earthy. Fruits are going more southern, so yuzu, lulo, coconut, here or abroad. Any of the citrus family. Again, citrus more extreme on the palate, and that's why it's hot. Vegetables, some of them are more historical, like pumpkin, chicory coming in from the deep south, all the weeds, that's part of the foraging trend. Cauliflower, celery, beans, and then you've also got some of the seaweeds and some of the other ocean vegetables coming in. Chilies, again, also hot on the palate. Seasonings and sauces are quite extreme. Sours, sumac coming in from the Middle East off of that trend. It's more of a lemony taste if you've never had it. Ginger, raw ginger is actually quite hot if you've never had it. Seaweed, my favorite is tea, but as a seasoning. Maple, the sweet browns are a whole category. Sweet browns are all natural, unadulterated sugars. So brown sugar, maples, honeys, some of those kind of fall into that sweet brown category. Alcohol also, but as a seasoning. And then again, set it on fire, charred, smoked flavors. Desserts and snacks, you've got kind of pies definitely stepping into the cupcake realm. So pies are much more versatile than cupcakes. They can go sweet, they can go savory easily. They can be handheld, or they can be served family style. So they kind of outshine cupcakes. That's why no one's talking about cupcakes anymore. Frozen bars, bold ice creams. Look at Scandinavian off the Arctic trend, all the Scandinavian desserts. Babkas coming in from Israel and parts of the Middle East. So again, these are just kind of poster children. But smoke kind of goes in here too. Grains and seeds, if you can sprout it, sprout it. Porridges are coming in from Southeast Asian countries. Teff coming in, and freekeh coming in from Africa and other countries. Spelt, hemp, buckwheat, the global breads, camus, farro. Like I said, nobody's talking about, consumers at least, they're talking about grains. They're not talking about gluten-free. Industry is the one that's still talking about gluten-free. Protein, you've got a little infighting with protein. So protein is kind of more extreme. You've got rabbit, eggs, bison, which are kind of historical to us. But then you've got some more of the like insects, trash fish. Trash fish are fish that are accidentally caught in fishing nets. Instead of just throwing them back or throwing them out, they're ending up on the menus. Invasivores too, again, lionfish is kind of the poster child down in Florida. They're showing up on menus. So right now, so if you're in a recession, what you do is you go to comfort food. So you eat macaroni and cheese and meatloaf. Mid-recovery, which is kind of where we're at, because we're in a bit of a stall right now after the election. Hybrids and stuffed food, this is where this comes in. Then you start moving more into fusion. We are seeing some fusion already showing up. And full-blown recovery, you lose your mind and you go back into molecular gastronomy, which actually has nothing to do with the food whatsoever. It has to do with what you're doing to the food. So here we're sitting. So once you get past kind of the hybrids and the stuff, and I'll give you the poster child for hybrid food would be the cronut, right? Cronut is croissant and donut out of New York. It is not a trend. It is a poster child for a trend. Once you get past the hybrids and the stuffed, you get more into fusion and beyond. So fusion, here's the definitions. Fusion, flavors in food from two different cultures, but you're coming together in unique ways, kind of like the cronut, right? Molecular gastronomy has nothing to do with the food. It actually has to do with the physics and the chemistry that's transforming the food. The food's almost like second to what you're doing to it. Fringe is when you're really not part of the mainstream at all, more peripheral, more extreme. You're going to have a smaller audience, but you get a big bang out of it. So fusion, you think of the classics, Tex-Mex, Pan-Asian, Koji food truck was Korean and Mexican. Molecular gastronomy, that's when you're talking about liquid nitrogen. So that's when you've got Starbucks nitro coffees coming out, right? 300 stores right now, they're testing it in. It's one of their small tests. Immersion blenders, I really hope foams don't come back, because I don't like paying for air, but they're kind of fun. Spherification, caviar, I highly encourage everyone to do this to cocktails. Ultrasound, edible paper, your 3D printing, that was talked about earlier today. Germany, in fact, is nationally, at a national level in Germany, they're 3D printing food for all their elderly care homes so that they can get textures correct for stroke patients and so forth. So they are already doing 3D food on a national level. And then syringes. Syringes are typically used in the bar scene. And then if you go more fringe, yes, you've got entomophagy, which is insect eating. We're one of the big countries that don't eat insects, shockingly. Algae, you've got your lethal, so fugu is lethal. Have you ever had or seen videos of the baby octopus that you eat? Okay, it's quite terrifying. They serve you little baby octopus on a plate, and you put soy sauce all over them, and they're all writhing around, and you take your chopsticks and you stab them through your head, and you twirl them around your chopsticks, and then you swallow them. And the reason they're lethal is because they don't want to be swallowed. Would you? So they have their beaks, and they will go right through your esophagus, so if they make it to your stomach, they'll go straight through your stomach, and you'll be dead. But you go ahead and try that. I'll have 911 on speed dial. Invasivores, weeds, lionfish, again, some of the top ones. Lab-grown, they've already lab-grown meat, to the chagrin of the people who had to eat lab-grown meat. And then cannabis cuisine, which Portland is where I'm from, is one of the ones trying to lead that charge. I can't wait to figure out how the FDA is going to govern that. I just tell my kids, don't eat any brownies anyone gives you. And I'm actually serious about that. I'm like, step away from that kid's brownie. Okay, so one of your allies is breakfast. The reason it's an ally for the airports in the morning hours is because it literally does have clinical health research behind it. This is some of the research behind why breakfast is, quote unquote, the best meal of the day. Increased dopamine levels if you eat breakfast. The metabolites. Decreased aggression shown in teens, mostly teen boys, shockingly. Increased short-term memory, this is with the older generations. Increased focus, lower body mass index, lower onset of diabetes, also lower heart disease rates with breakfast eaters. Behaviorally, again, don't just look at survey work because what they say is not always what they do, right? 75% say they do usually eat breakfast at home. 15% are on the go, 10% eat at their desks. 65% preferring making meals or assembling them from scratch, which is why that meal kit thing is kind of hip right now because they feel like they are. 48% eat breakfast at non-traditional times. That is why, big reason why there's the breakfast round-the-clock trend. There is movement behind that, not just words. This one's my favorite, though. 63% it's unhealthy to skip breakfast, but out of those 63, only 25% or 26% actually eat breakfast every day. And then when eating on the go, they're either grabbing something from home, it's the easiest thing to do, going through a drive-through, or again, stopping at a convenience store. NPD, breakfast alone is what's fueling the return back to restaurants. Because if you're going out for breakfast, you've got money and you've got time on your hands. And then Nielsen, egg sales climbing 20% just in the last year. Part of this is because, obviously, of the breakfast round-the-clock trend. Okay, your other ally, protein. There is an infighting, though, with animal and vegetable protein. This is not a common thing to happen. It's actually very unusual for within a trend to have infighting within the trend. The problem is with clinical research, it's usually around red meat. Yep, you stay satiated longer, but increased fatigue, cholesterol, increased mortality rates, increased blood pressure, kidney failure rates go up. Cognitive function goes down because you're starving the brain if you're on like a paleo diet. And then higher cancer rates. Behaviorally, though, so what consumers are doing is they are dropping meat consumption. They do want protein, they just don't want meat. Meatless Mondays are up, flexitarians are up. So I'm not a vegetarian, but I'm gonna maybe be meatless for lunch, or today I'm not gonna eat meat. They do want protein. What do they want? They want plant protein. That's why the beans, legumes, that whole category is rising. Vegetarian, vegan choices are rising. It doesn't mean low protein. They want protein. So the technologies then we pick up on worldwide, the top part is algae, lentils, chickpeas. Those are all protein technologies that are coming forward for food industry. The bottom are actually products that are on the market, Lentine, Algevia, Profi One Stop. These are all protein technologies now, vegetable-based, that are on the market for industry. So again, eggs not linked to this as much as the red meats are. Mintel also showing, yeah, they're seeking out healthy protein, healthy products. Protein is the most searched for term. Now it's beating out fiber for what they're looking for. And then U.S. consumers spending $3.8 billion on products claiming to be an excellent source of protein, which has climbed over the last few years. Okay, so if we look at beverage really quick. Come on. There we go. Bring up a couple. Wine is going into smaller, more regional blends, lesser known regions and lesser known varietals. Beer and ciders, to be artisan is not cool enough. To be craft is not cool enough. Either go Bavarian, Scandinavian, some of the German beers, go down into Mexico, sour beers. Regional hard ciders, so also apple varietal hard ciders. You have to go to this next level in the bar scene. Cocktails are ruling. You really want cocktails to rule. You know you're in an economic recovery. If you see domestic beer and wine on the menu, panic because we're going into recession. Okay, non-alcohol. Just like you want to set it on fire for food, you want to add carbonation if you're in beverage. So either carbonate it. You can also add smoke. Smoke is one of the add-ins. Again, some of the extremes, bitters, coconut milk, cooler place to be than coconut water, infused ice, so ice in the bar scene is not just ice anymore. Again, non-alcohol, you've got your cold brews, that could be tea, it could be coffee, you could have cold pressed juices, but there is a second level that people are having to go to make the products kind of stand out today in the marketplace, because consumers are at the next level. So if you profile them, just like you can profile the serial killer or your cube mate at work, you profile these guys. So since we're in kind of a stall right now because of the election, meaning we're backing off just a tiny bit, hopefully we'll go back forward to being a little more crazy. Top line is more conservative, calming area for seasonings, peppermint, zip code, honeys, citrus. The bottom part is the ones that are a little more extreme. These are the cage dancers. Cage dancers are little cute girls in little cute outfits who are literally dancing to the ladies at the club. If they keep the ladies dancing on the floor, the boys will buy them drinks and make the bar money. Cage dancers are the seasonings that keep you coming back to your restaurant, keep you coming back to your brand. The fruits and vegetables are your sensuals. Again, the top is more conservative, the bottom's a little more sexy. And sensuals because they're coming in from a lot of them are coming in from the deep south regions. Tree huggers, I live in Oregon, I'm allowed to say that. I'm a New Yorker, I'm allowed to say that. Dairy on the top, pretty calm, consistent. On the bottom, it's a little more edgy, but it's still kind of earth-based, global-based. Meats are my favorite because they're the bipolars. You've got wild game, duck, bison, things we kind of know, but on the bottom you've got, rabbit, crawfish, jerky, insects, and anything that can kill you is cool. Your grains are going to be the interpreters because no matter what side of the fence they're on, they're the least threatening thing on the plate next to the insects. And then beverages, you've got one shot at it. They're the type A's. You better get it accurate, whether it's historical, whether it's ancient, or whether it's global. Make sure you know it's a grandma's recipe if you're saying it's a grandma's recipe. And then our top 10 themes. We come to the top 10, and this is not just food, this is kind of across the board. And they're not 1 through 10, they're just so, let me pull it up so they can fit on my chart. They're the top 10 because they cross over in research into more than one territory. So kids ends up in almost all of these territories: government, research, technologies coming out, health research, consumer, and so forth. So almost all of them hit on health research. Consumer research takes up 9 of them. Travel, 6 of them are showing up in research. And so when we say it's the top 10, it's not because we think they're hip and cool, it's because they're cross-trending with multiple other trends on the floor running all at the same time. So that's why these kind of make the top 10. Just so you know, it's not completely just our opinion, but all of them are hitting food and beverage trends in research, behavioral research, and clinical health research. Okay, and now let's go on. Slides.
Turn this down. Good morning, everyone. The conference reached out to myself because we do restaurant technology, and we wanted to kind of, how do we cross-trend what's happening out in the rest of the world to what you guys should be looking at as airport owners, operators, and how can you utilize the technology that's happening? Come on. How can you guys utilize the technology that's happening out in the world to be able to go do, modify your airports so that you guys have got, hitting those same trends that they're looking for. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble with the presenter, so a little bit off. But how did I get here? I'm Chief Operating Officer for a technology company that sells to the restaurant industry, and I'm also the co-host of the Restaurant Technology Guys podcast. We talk trends in the restaurant industry and how they would affect you guys. Hopefully I'll be able to share with you guys a little bit here this morning as it relates to that. The things that you guys heard Sasha talk about this morning, as well as the previous panelists, is it's all about the experience. We know that you're consumers. You guys have got multiple different consumers. You've got the mom that's coming through for a vacation. You've got the business traveler. You've got the infrequent traveler. But you've got to deliver an experience that brings them back. They talked about earlier that some people will travel through specific destinations so that they can hit a certain restaurant, hit a certain experience. And if you're delivering that experience, and we're going to talk about 4 ways that we think you need to deliver that experience within the restaurant and food service arenas within the airports. And so the first thing that I want to talk about is quality. Quality, you have to have high quality food. You have to have a high quality experience. It's got to be, forward facing. It's got to hit all of those demographics that Sasha talked about this morning. You've got to hit the baby boomers. You've got to hit the Gen X, and you've got to hit those millennials. And the way you're going to do that, in our opinion, is through technology. You've got to be accessible, and you've got to be able to trend with the right platform on a technology side to make sure that you know what you need to have on hand, who's buying what. How do you match the trends that the 2 previous presenters had talked about to make sure that you've got the plant-based proteins or the things that they're looking for? The only way you're going to do that is through the data. The way you get that data is through consumer behavior. What are people buying? And make sure that you've got it ready and accessible for them, so that the second thing you can hit, which is the speed aspect. Again, depending upon the different consumers that you've got within the brand, and coming through the airport, if they're not hitting the speed that they might need, you're not able to deliver that to them. They're going to end up being, and I'll tell you for myself, oftentimes if I walk into the airport and I've got to go catch a flight, if I can't get through to the restaurant brand that I want, I'm going to buy something somewhere else, or I might even skip a meal. And so how do we deliver speed? From a technology perspective, it might be that be innovative. And when we were talking about the panel prior to, some things that people are doing outside, kiosks, ordering on your phone from ahead of time, pre-order, set, if I'm a frequent traveler, I happen to be from Orange County, California, I travel through that airport, I know what restaurants are there, I know what I want to eat before I get there. How do I deliver a mobile experience to them so that my food is ready, paid for when I walk up, kind of deliver the Panera 2.0. Anybody that's been to Panera lately, you see that, you can walk up and get the bag, you can walk up to the counter, you can walk up to a kiosk. They kind of have built an infrastructure, and I happened to be at a conference last week just talking to Panera specifically about that, and what they've done with their technology focus is they're driving close to 50% of their sales at Panera, their technology people had shared with me, through some form of digital engagement. Whereas a couple of years ago, 90+% of it was at the counter. Now, between pre-orders on the web, pre-orders on your mobile device, pre-orders at the kiosk, catering orders, how do the restaurants, how does the airport deliver that same experience? First, build a technology platform, then start to engage the guests. Again, for myself, I'll just give you a quick experiential thing. My family and I were traveling over the summer. I've got 4 children. Our flight was late coming in, as that happens, but I didn't know the airport that I was traveling through, and we needed to get a meal. And truthfully, we almost missed our flight because I've got 4 kids. You're lugging everybody through the airport, and if I could have been sitting at the gate, and ordered from my phone while I was sitting there waiting to pull in on the tarmac, my food was ready. I could have paid for it. How do you deliver that experience that consumer might want, so that you guys are going to be able to get that sale? I almost didn't eat because I would have missed my flight. Fortunately, we didn't miss our flight. We've had a wonderful vacation. Thanks for asking. But at the end of the day, how do you deliver that? And so I think speed is a critical component to making sure that you guys are hitting those people's needs. Loyalty. Again, every brand in the restaurant industry is talking about loyalty. How do you make sure that those people are coming back to that brand every time? Give them what they want, where they want it, when they want it. There's a big conversation point about omni-channel. You guys have, the Amazon effect. So I can order from my tablet, I can order from my phone, I can order from a kiosk, I can order by standing at a counter. That whole effect and being able to make it easy to engage with your brand creates loyalty. If people are frequent travelers through that airport terminal, through that airline, how do I get them to engage, know who they are, know what they want? I can promise you my Amazon, what to buy doesn't look like anybody else's in the room, because I happen to have 4 children that are in baseball and soccer and softball. You know what, that looks very different than yours. How do you know what your consumers are doing? The only way to do that is to know who they are, partner with the airlines, partner with them to be able to get them through things like beacons, through things like checking in, social check-in, get that engagement of who it is that you're talking with. When they walk up to the counter, you know who they are, you can suggest orders, you can get reorders, and it ends up driving both loyalty to the brand, it drives additional sales, but the only way you're going to do that is by having a technology platform that can support that knows who you are, knows what you're looking for. The last thing that we also think is, it kind of goes back to the experience. Come for the food, stay for the experience. There's also the traveler that is looking for hyper-local. They're looking for you to have something that gives the local flair. Happened to be flying through Miami a few weeks ago. I went into Shula's restaurant because you know what? At the end of the day, it was a local landmark that I wanted to go have a steak at Shula's. I happen to have a couple hours worth of time to kill between my layover. You want that experience to be delivered, but the only way you can do that is by having a platform that allows you to play to whatever the consumers might need. Do they need speed? Do they need a casual dining experience? One of the things that we've done with one of our restaurant brands is we've put technology in the hands of the service staff. Because then you can also deliver an experience, but you also deliver speed. I put technology in the hands of the service staff, or I put technology at the table in a casual dining restaurant or in a food court area. You're allowing them to select from multiple brands and or select and be able to get the food quickly. Oftentimes, you ring up your drinks, the drinks get delivered by a food runner prior to you even ordering your food. So how do you deliver that you can meet the broad swath of the consumers that you guys are servicing each and every day? Obviously, the challenge that you guys have in the airport industry is pretty unique from the perspective of you guys are seeing people, millions of people every day through the airports. How do I deliver an experience that's memorable enough? Because word of mouth, best marketing. If I had a great experience, the next time I come through that airport and I'm traveling with somebody else, I'm going to say, hey, I really want to go to Shula's. They delivered an amazing experience. The food was great. The service was great. What they were able to do for me. So how do I do that? In our opinion, you have to have a bedrock of a technology platform that allows you to be able to meet those consumers' demands. And so again, what does this do for restaurateurs, for concessionaires within the airport space? All of this technology and all of this spend ultimately is going to drive higher bottom line numbers. Everybody's dealing with rising labor costs, rising food costs. How do I end up doing more with less people? Put technology in the hands of the consumers, make them your servers, put technology out in front so that you don't have to staff as many cashiers, or I'm looking at, there's less waste if I know what I'm selling and I only am purchasing what I need. All of those things are going to end up driving towards a bottom line profitability that is going to end up making you guys more money. Guest satisfaction. Again, Sasha talked about it this morning. Word of mouth marketing is the best kind of marketing that you could have. If the guests are satisfied, they're going to tell others. Whether it's posting a meal on their social media account so that their friends are seeing it, so the next time they come through that airport, rather than picking up something in drive-through before they go through, they're going to experience the airport, they're going to have dinner at Cat Cora's restaurant or at Shula's restaurant or whatever brand it is, because they saw it on their friends, they marketed for them. So guests are satisfied, they're going to tell their friends, other people are going to want to come through. And then the last thing is profitability. The operative word, I think all of us, I don't know how many of you guys in this room are nonprofits. My guess is that everybody's looking to turn a profit within their business. And so the way you do that is, increase top line, decrease your costs. And so all of this technology, all of this spend has an ROI, has a spend point. Again, talking a little bit about one of the brands we did work with, they, food court area, put tablets out into the waiting area, order from multiple brands, service that client, allow them to, order from Qdoba, order from Chick-fil-A, order from the full service restaurant, all at a kiosk that's kind of out in the front. I do see that as something that everywhere I travel continues to be more and more common. My personal opinion, and this is just Jeremy talking, is that that'll go away from even you guys providing the devices and the devices coming out of their pockets, because you've got a handheld device that can order those things. How do you identify they're there? It pops up a web page. That web page says go order food, go pay, make it simple. Now they've paid for their food. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when and how. So kind of just to wrap up, that's where I see it going. It's happening in the restaurant industry outside of the airports. I believe that you guys have a need to meet that consumer demand. Oftentimes the airports are in a place that you guys are on the forefront of certain things, and then at other times I find as a consumer that there's things that I want that I have out in the regular world that you guys don't provide. And so thank you guys for taking some time to listen. We're going to turn it over to back over for Q&A right now.
Great. Great, thank you, Jeremy, and to our panelists, Suzy, Liz, very interesting topics. And I know as an airport operator, I'm really inspired, and whether you're an airport or an operator of a concessionaire, there's definitely some themes related to our customers in regards to choice and uniqueness, in regards to flavors, technology. I think that we really have places to go, so thank you for all of your insight there and your expertise. We'll get to questions and answers here shortly. We have a couple minutes before we get off to lunch, so I know that there's a few microphones floating through the room, so just raise your hand if you have a question. I've got one to start us off for all three of our panelists, actually, and it's in regards to what causes food trends to shift and technology to shift. And maybe we'll start with you, Liz, and see what you can share with us in regards to the shift in food trends.
Sure. Is this thing on? Can you hear me? Yeah. As we were talking about shifts in the part of my presentation, and also Suzy, she was talking a lot about the economy. That's one real amplifier of trends. Other things, what's happening in society, what's happening in technology, as Jeremy was mentioning, the environment as well. There's a big push for sustainable and food waste, being able to use food waste, compostable utensils and serving platters and all of that is one thing we look at that drives changes in trends and shifts. And then obviously the political space, not to get into a political argument on stage, but obviously what happens at the top trickles down to all levels of society as well. And we actually call these the steep factor. So it's societal, technological, environmental, economic, and political, and they all filter down into what's happening in society, whether that's a food trend or any other kind of trend as well.
Great. Thank you, Liz.
You're welcome.
And Suzy, your perspective?
So I agree with what Liz says, and I'll add on the other thing we are looking for, besides the state factors, are we call them couriers. And couriers are outlying industries that bump up against the food industry, that a trend can be born outside the food industry and then filter into the food industry. So travel industry is a courier, pharmaceutical industry is a courier, diet industry is a courier, even Hollywood can be a courier. So events can be born there and then trickle into us. So you have to also be watching outlying industries that kind of bump up against us.
Thank you, Suzy. And Jeremy, your perspective on technology shifts?
Yeah, I think that, like I talked about a little bit in my presentation, there's the Amazon effect. I've been in the restaurant technology industry for 20 years, and I've seen more of a shift to where technology is playing a forward role in the restaurant industry and in food service more than it ever has. Uber's now in the restaurant business. Amazon's now in the restaurant business. All of these different players are getting into the space. It's the second largest employer behind the US government in the United States. And technology, outside, again, Uber is, out to kill the taxi industry because it's easy to do business with them. Amazon, same thing. That I was just at NRF in January, which is a National Retail Federation show, and, somewhere close to 90% of the revenue growth in retail came through Amazon this past holiday season. Well, that is them beating the rest of the industry that's been around doing these things forever. Sasha talked about it. And so I think technology and being where your consumers are in the front of it and making sure that you're delivering that brand experience is the big thing. Amazon, Apple, Google, all of them are changing consumer behavior in ways and at a rate that we've never seen before in food service.
I actually have one more thing to add, especially since we're all in the travel industries. Globalization, the world has gotten a lot smaller, access to far-flung places in the world has gotten easier, and this was really driving a lot of the trends is globalization of food. What's happening in Korea, what's happening in Vietnam, all of that food and the culture of food trickling down into what we eat today, whether it's ramen or pho, or some sort of Asian noodle dish, or gochujang, which is a big flavor profile, sriracha. All of these things are happening mostly in Southeast Asia and really shifting into U.S. mainstream food choices.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions from the audience for any of our panelists this morning? Go ahead.
Hey, Eric Friedman from the New Orleans Airport. How do events like the acquisition of Popeyes by Burger King or the E. coli outbreak of Chipotle change trends?
Well, who would be best
You guys
suited
hear the
to
question?
answer that? Are you asking anyone in particular? There are two different things. So I'd say the one thing about the E. coli outbreak or any of the outbreaks, it's not that it changes trends, it changes loyalties. So there's already been a lot of research that shows that the lowest income population, if there is an outbreak like that, will not only abandon your brand, they will never come back to you. The more educated, higher level incomes will abandon you temporarily, and they'll come back. They might not come back fully, because when they abandon you during an outbreak, they may have found a new best friend, right, and another industry partner. So that's how that affects. And what was the first part of the question?
The consolidation of brands.
The acquisition of Popeyes by Burger King.
It doesn't really affect consumers, because consumers are not really aware that someone bought someone else. We in the industry we watch that sort of thing, but consumers don't know who owns who in the industry. What would change it is if the parent company who buys the other company, if they force this other company to change personalities, then you've got a problem on your hands. If they let little company B, who they bought, operate like they've been operating before, it's not going to affect loyalties around it. It's only if they walk in and think they're going to undo everything that company's done, you're going to be shifting a lot of who goes to that brand.
Good. Thank you, Suzy. There's a question up front here.
This is for Suzy and Elizabeth. So what's the difference between the trend, the fad, and the sort of, to me, crazy idea of people eating weeds and foraging? And I mean, because that sounds just very esoteric and totally out there. And and then cupcakes were big and now they're not. I mean, in other words, people in this industry, they want to know what's real and what's
Yeah.
nonsense.
So we probably have similar ways to look at it, but the way we look at it is one of our jobs with our clients is to make sure they understand the difference between long-term trends and short-term trends. So my company, we hate the word fad, actually, because a fad is a short-lived trend, but it can completely rock the industry, right? It's only short-lived. So we kind of talk about short-lived and long-lived. So the thing you have to get ahead of on a short-lived or long-lived trend is what the hell's propping it up. So a long-lived trend, like whole grains, is going to have, it's going to be linked into multiple other food and flavor trends, health trends, government trends. These are all things that are helping it stay up and having a nice long life cycle. If you've got a short-lived trend or a fad, it might have more media, but when you look underneath its skirt, it's not going to have very many allies. And so you know that trend's going to be shorter-lived and it's going to have an end of days coming up sooner. So our clients can decide. Some clients like to jump in and out of fast-moving trends that have a lot of hype, but are low, not long-lasting. And some just want a nice, calm, smooth ride. So you have to look at what is causing and what is propping up the trend to see if it's long-lived or short-lived.
Good, and Liz, your perspective?
Sure. I actually have a slide that can help. Whoops. Sorry, did I break it? Can you still hear me? Let me just bring back this slide that I showed before. And as I discussed the shifts before, we have these lenses in which we view our trends. And again, I call them shifts. 3 of them that we discussed was the comfort and community. One of them was meet my needs. And there's one called food RX. Again, those are the shifts. Anyway, we're having some trouble here. Let me see. Okay. All right, here we go. And to me, and when we talk with our clients, what we do is we go through their product and we say, okay, how many of these shifts apply to your product? And the more shifts that apply to a product show the staying power of the trend. For example, let's talk about ramen real quickly, ramen noodles. It's really popular now. Everyone's eating ramen. That's really popular, and I believe, and SRG believes, that that is here to stay, as well as other Southeast Asian noodles. And that's not only because ramens are and the sensationalism shift, which is something that's easy to talk about, and it's Instagrammed, and there's these oozy egg on top that people are taking a lot of pictures of. It's also because it fits into the global embrace shift. People are embracing things that are happening in different parts of the world. It also fits into meet my needs because ramen is fairly quick and easy, whether you're getting it out or in or making it yourself. It has an authentic connection touch, comfort and community. It's a soup, it's comforting. So the more of these shifts that a trend touches on, the more staying power it has. And then Suzy mentioned the cronut before, which is this viral mashup of a croissant and a donut. Well, that fits into sensationalism, but it doesn't really fit anywhere else. So people are talking about it. It might get a lot of Instagrams for a week-long time, but then it's going to go away. And that's how we look at it.
Yeah, this year no one's talking about the cronut anymore. It's like last year's poster child.
But I would say, foraging is pure sensationalism, right?
No, foraging actually has quite a bit of background. What foraging is, it's not going anywhere. One, it doesn't have any adversaries, and it doesn't have any competitors. There is nothing that can compete with it. It does operate on a low, quiet level, though, where there's a kind of a smaller, die-hard population, but there are many restaurants all over the U.S. who practice foraging and have foraged items on their menu. So it's constantly there, but it's got a smaller index of who's participating in it, but it actually has setting up to have quite a long life cycle.
Thank you, ladies.
Yeah.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and then I know each of our panelists will be available up front here if you wanted to see them specifically after we're done, so we can let you go for lunch. So one more, please, in the back.
It's slightly long-winded, but one of the things we battle often, and I think any developer in the room, so understanding, having been in the food industry for 30-something years, short trend, long-term trend. However, it's a challenge because whether it was cupcakes, and I fought that battle for 2 to 3 years about not putting one in, because understanding capital, infrastructure, everything in an airport is longer term. Pop-up food and beverage would be a great concept. It's just not an inexpensive entity. So the long way around this is because there are trends that aren't necessarily revenue garnering in certain ways for infrastructure like we have, for me the focus is really about what are my partners doing with menu and ingredient decks that allow them to evolve. And the pieces on the economic cycle is fantastic. For me, that's a great new learning piece. The question I have, maybe for both Liz and Suzy, is how much are food companies, food service operators looking at this data, reaching out for the same kinds of data, and looking for consulting help on understanding trend? Because gluten-free, I've been talking about for ages that it is not, it's hysteria, it's a medical condition, everyone's on the bandwagon, everyone's holistic doctor is telling them you can't have gluten, but that's not the way people are buying anymore. We have gluten-free everywhere, and some are, but it's not how we want to build a program. So the question becomes, back to you, how many actual operators or the bulk of the industry are looking at science-based data and information that we should be basing this on from consumer research?
Well, I'd say if, trying to make this not negative, the act of looking at this data and being able to look at intelligence data around trends, it's a Pandora's box, meaning it opened about maybe less than 10 years ago. But basically, if you're not already looking at data, the only way to lose is to not participate in this sort of data or be somehow being tapped into some of the research, because otherwise you're kind of shooting darts at a board and you don't know what you're going to hit. So some companies are full-blown, have whole intelligence departments, 50 people, and then some, are much smaller and they can't afford that much, but they do have like maybe one person that is constantly keeping up on the news, and maybe they go to lots of conferences to make sure that they're seeing trends presentations. So it's all different levels you can do, but it is kind of a Pandora's box. I'm not seeing really any part of industry who's not already somehow tapping into it, so that they're not just guessing at what to do next or going on just a gut hunch. Because then you got a 50-50 chance of being successful, and then you won't even know when the hell to get out if you need to move, if the trend shifts.
I think a lot of it has to do with looking at the data that companies like Jeremy provide in consumer choices. Just watching what consumers are currently doing, what they did in the past, and projecting, and I hate to say guessing, but hypothesizing on what's next. As part of what we do as trend forecasters. Not all of our trends hit the mark. We like to think most of them do. And that's why you hire companies like SRG and Culinary Tides to kind of help you navigate those trend forecasting situations, so that we can say, okay, well, a lot of the clients we work with are giant corporations. They don't move quickly. They want to know what's trending now, but that might not be trending at the time that their chip flavor comes out 3 years from now.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we do is we do these spectrums of what's really on the cutting edge now, and where is that going to be in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. And a lot of it is working with the client and figuring out how long is this going to take you to get to market, whether that's in concept in airport or on a bag of new chips that some giant company is launching.
Yeah, with our company, every quarter we're shifting all our clients out 2 years. Every quarter we're updating government technology, everything out 2 years again, so that they're quietly always being shifted out. I would also like to say our work is sort of, I like to think of us as we're kind of like the insurance policy behind our clients. We don't tell them exactly what to do. We say, here's your playground. Here's where your playground is in 2 years. And we help them make sure that they're making safe decisions for their company. They're not going off in a direction that we know is going to probably not be there when they want to launch.
And having worked with hundreds of different brands, I would say that every one of them, big brands that you guys are seeing in the airports that are exhibiting downstairs, every single one of them that I work with, their culinary departments are engaging with research companies to say, where are they going? They're constantly out trying new foods, they're constantly out researching it, and they're constantly out developing it. In the restaurant industry, if you don't have a culinary department that's out doing that research, especially the really big brands, but even the smaller brands, every one of them is doing that market research every day to figure out what's next. Yeah. The more small they are, the more agile they are. The bigger companies, they do have to look out a little bit farther out to make sure it matches their brand image, but every one of them that you would engage with downstairs has engaged with companies like these to be able to do that.
Yeah, they can't afford to make a mistake. If they make a big decision and move forward nationally with a product, they can't afford to make a mistake. So they've got all sorts of research sources behind it before they launch that product or the concept.
Okay, good, great. Thank you, Jeremy, Suzy, and Liz for being our panelists this morning. Really think that you guys did a wonderful job. And thank you in the audience for spending your time with us, and enjoy the rest of the conference.